Hello, welcome back for Unit 2 of our Contemporary World course. And as we got going last week, I'm really excited about the group we have together. It's a really interesting blend of, we have some residential students here. We have many of you that are online students, and it's always interesting to kind of see how that interaction works over on the discussion board. And I thought we did a pretty good job. As we're not, we're more content driven in the discussion boards from here on. I do want to encourage you to drive a little bit more depth, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the video when we talk about the discussion board piece. We're going to talk about our first skill, which is evaluating evidence, and we're going to talk about your Unit 2 essay. So as we get into this, our first skill is going to be evaluating evidence, or determining what sources are the most accurate and applicable. And this is an incredibly important skill in kind of the modern times we're living in, because there are just so many different sources of information available. And if you look hard enough on the internet, you can find something that will back your viewpoint, no matter how crazy it might be, which might actually just make you retreat further into that viewpoint. We've seen this play out in a variety of ways, big and small, on both sides of the political aisle, in all walks of life. This is one of the things that I think is, if you spend too much time on social media, you'll find a lot of people to yell at in an echo chamber that will go, yeah, you're spot on. And in reality, especially historical concepts, but also political concepts, are incredibly complex, and we want to make sure that we're looking at the different evidence. So as we do this, we want to think about different types of sources. First, primary sources are written by people in the time period. So when we think about primary sources and how we can use these historically, they give us really good insights to what people felt at the time. They can give us firsthand accounts and observations. But in the same way that as we live through things, we develop our own biases towards the events and the things that happen to us. This is one of the things that we have to try to account for when we're looking at primary sources. They can be really useful. Secondary, particularly secondary scholarly sources, are what I want to see you using most of the time in this class. Secondary scholarly sources are things that are written by experts, people that have devoted their life to studying very specific topics. For instance, there is a major difference if you were to talk to somebody that read a couple articles on, let's say, indigenous peoples in North Iowa, and myself, who spent 5 years studying that, meticulously writing 300 pages and a bunch of articles about that went out for peer review to other experts in the subject, and then came back and I made more revisions, and then I send them back in. It's just kind of a different level of thoroughness. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we're looking for. Who's writing the documents we're looking at, who's publishing the documents we're looking at, what biases they might have. And then we can use our best judgment to look at those sources and try to figure out what kind of the overall quality is. Tertiary sources are what I see people use the most in this class, and we want to start moving away from that. This is what happens if you hop over to Google and you're citing Encyclopedia Britannica or Wikipedia or other just kind of content authored by non-experts, by people that don't really have the specific expertise. And I think many of you get this because many of you are non-traditional students. The idea that if you go, I know something about, let's say, law enforcement, several of you are in law enforcement, but I don't have the same perspective you have as somebody that's worked in the field for a very long time. And in the same way that you might get frustrated when people talk to you about policing or your specific field, whatever that may be, it can be kind of frustrating to see anybody just try to kind of have really meaningful opinions about this. But we want to make sure that as we're putting together our papers each week, or our discussion boards, whatever that may be, we want to think about the types of evidence we're bringing in. And you'll notice in the Blackboard shell, there's a tab that says Research Resources, where I've put together all sorts of different things that can be really useful to build your own credibility. That's the most important thing with evaluating evidence, is you're only going to make yourself look better or worse by the kind of sources you put into things. If people know, and if I can see that you're using really high quality sources, that's going to bode well for you as you work your way through the course. If I see that you're appealing to very low quality sources, then it's not building anything into your argumentation. So think about that. The other piece of this is we want to think about different types of biases. Political biases are really important. We all know that a pamphlet on gun control written by the Republican Party and one written by the Democratic Party, those are going to look incredibly different. So we'd have to sift out what their biases are there. Economic or things related to business and financial activity also can create biases. This idea that if somebody's trying to sell you something, I think we all understand that that will change the tone of what they're putting out. Social and cultural factors will kind of stick together. These can also create biases. The idea that social factors are how people organize their relationships into groups. And then cultural factors are a variety of things like established languages, values, customs, those types of things. And I think we understand that our values create specific biases in us. They create things that we care deeply about. Our social groups also create biases. If you follow sports at all, you know that for completely irrational reasons, you have all sorts of biases towards whatever your team is. So as we think about this, I just want you to consider those things as we work our way through the course. This week over on the discussion board, I want you to experiment with this. I want you to make an argument related to how the Cold War started and then bring in some evidence. One of the things that constantly costs people points on the discussion board, aside from realizing that your first post is worth 50%, your second post is worth 50%, and if you miss one of those or one's really short, that'll cost you a bunch of points, is that you need to bring in evidence. I do care about your perspective, but you want to make sure that you're bringing in quality information to underwrite the points that you're trying to make. So on the discussion board this week, we're going to talk about the start of the Cold War, how a relationship between the U.S. and the USSR that at least was mutually beneficial during the Second World War devolved into distrust and ultimately the Cold War. Pretty straightforward. I look forward to the conversations we'll have over there. Make sure that you're expanding out with a little bit more depth, maybe by bringing in evidence to support your points that you're trying to make. The other thing you have to do this week is your Unit 2 essay, and all that specific information is over in the syllabus schedule. So take a look at that to see the specifications, those kind of things. I think we did a really good job on our Unit 1 essays for the most part, especially many of you are getting kind of back into the swing of things in terms of writing, and as you do that, I know it can kind of be like riding a bike. It takes a minute, but you'll catch your balance. So as you get working on this week, you're going to look at non-communist European nations in the post-World War II rebuilding era, as they navigated, many of them losing colonies in other parts of the world, and trying to rebuild from this incredibly destructive military conflict, how that kind of worked. So as you get into this, again, think about what kind of evidence you can bring in. If you're going to talk about the Marshall Plan, think about quantitative evidence, the data you can use to underwrite what you're talking about. Also think about qualitative evidence, things that are not necessarily defined by numbers, but other types of evidence you can use as well. If you have questions on any of this stuff, make sure you're reaching out. I am here to help you however I can. I think we're off to a very good start in the course. I appreciate the hard work you put in last week, and I look forward to the great things you're going to do this week. Good luck.